You see, a budget is something the government has, a plan to tackle the problems of the day, So look at Malaysia, the problems we are facing is talking about the middle income trap. Yeah, we can't grow our economy, we can't grow our incomes of our people, we're stuck somewhere. Just now we talked about 50% of families below, actually not 3,000, the figure was 2,800 something, isn't it? 50% of our households earn less than that amount. That's one of the big problems we're facing. We're also facing the TPP, that's the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The US, the whole range of countries are trying to get us to sign a special FTA. And really pushing our government. It's going on, it's been negotiated, but it is secret. And the US is saying, if you don't sign this, you lose favored status. You better sign this. And not even parliamentarians know what they're agreeing to, what's being debated, what's being discussed. Then you have rising carbon dioxide emissions. There's a climatic factor here. We've got to consider, if everyone wants to grow the economy, if we want to grow, India wants to grow, China wants to grow, everyone wants to grow, what's going to happen to the carbon dioxide levels in the world? Think about that. Meltdown in Europe. Europe is really in a deep, deep problem. So these are the issues that we have to negotiate in this coming year. And the budget is one plan we have, It's something the government uses to plan what it's going to do, bearing in mind. Of course, we want to go from at the bottom where we are to a better Malaysia. And the budget gives you a kind of a roadmap how to get there. But to get, you've got to handle all these issues. Yeah? Okay, next one. You see, this is the federal government budget, it's about 240 billion last year, compared to the GDP of 800 billion. So actually, we have a very strong government. It's not a weak government, Our government controls about 30% of GDP. The whole income of the country, 30% is in government hands. So it's by no means a weak government. It's a strong, powerful, dominant government in the whole economy. In fact, more than 30%. Next slide, please. How about the GLCs? We take all the GLC revenue, okay? Revenue of all the GLCs, like Sime Darby, Petronas, Maybank, all the big GLCs revenues, UEM, the amount actually controlled by the ruling class in this country, by the UMNO ruling class, is not only the government budget, but also GLCs as well, so 25% of the economy. So 60% of the Malaysian economy is controlled by the government of the day. So it's not a small government, It's a huge, powerful, dominant government, and that government can do a lot. Can do a lot if it wants to, if it knows how to. Okay. Next one. What does he know how to do? I'll tell you, they don't know what's going on. They don't have a clue of what's going on. They're still talking of liberalizing the economy. They're talking of signing more FTAs. They're talking of privatizing, opening up the service sectors, making Malaysia more business friendly. Just 2 days ago, I saw on the Star, they're talking about second page of the Star, talking about going business friendly. We're going to bring in more FDI. This is the model that Malaysia has been using for the last 100 years. Under the British, But the world has changed so much. Can we carry on the same model? And I tell you, the ruling elite in the BN have got not a clue that it's a problem. So if that is a problem, if they don't understand that, they don't see the problem, then you can't expect the budget, because the budget flows out of understanding of the whole scenario of economic issues. Then you've got to strategize how to go through, isn't it? Just having the power, the money, the control of the economy, if you don't have the idea, these guys don't have the idea. Let me tell you, I've been there for 5 years and I know. Okay, now let's go to the next one. Who's this guy? Yes, that's him. This is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Okay, and recently he talked of doing, they call it QE3, quantitative easing 3, which basically means that the Federal Reserve buys into the market, buys money, buys bonds, buys mortgages. The purpose of that, next one, is that you want to push money into the system so that the cost of borrowing for businesses to invest goes down. So the idea is factor, a concept of factor inputs. You know, you have labor input, you have capital input, you have technology input. So you reduce one of the cost of the inputs, so more people will invest in the economy, and then there'll be more jobs. Because in America, they're stuck with the high unemployment, right? 8–9%, they're stuck and not coming down. They're having very sluggish growth. So their idea is, you know, that you do this QE so that you stimulate economic activity, stimulate jobs in the US, you know. And this is not a small amount, you know, 40 billion US dollars per month, you know, per month. You know, 40 billion is half our budget, half our annual budgets, you know. Of course, we are a small country, they are a big country, but even for them, if they do 40 billion a month for a year, it comes to about 4–5% of their GDP. Not a small amount. Okay? Now, but the thing is, next one. The thing is, this shows the problem when you have economists who don't study Marxist economics. You know, when you start talking of factor input and all that, but the thing is, on even, you know, everything is going on, you can look at factor input, marginal increase, propensity to spend and consume. You know, we're not looking at the fundamental thing. Now, why do capitalists produce? Let's say this guy is producing shoes. Why is he producing shoes? You think he'll produce shoes because he likes shoes? Different models of shoes. He gets a great pressure in having different models of shoes, so he can say, look, I've got beautiful shoes to sell. Is that his main interest? His interest because he wants all Malaysians to wear shoes. It's a community service. Why does a capitalist produce a shoe? Or a car? Or clothes? Because he wants to sell it, right? He wants a profit out of it. Yes or not? Agree or not? Yes. Agree on that, right? So if this guy can't sell all his shoes that he's producing, he'll stop producing that many shoes, right? He'll cut down, right? Agree or not? Yes. So there must be demand. For a capitalist, there must be demand. If you don't have demand for people to buy your stuff, so you can make a profit, you won't produce that stuff, right? Even if you can borrow money cheaply from the US Federal Reserve, you won't produce the stuff because you can't sell it. Right? That's the basic thing of it. There must be a market. Let's go to the next one. So where does the market come from? See, the market comes from consumption from ordinary citizens. People like you and me, we consume, in the US, about 70% of the whole national demand comes from citizens, poor workers as well, right? From government, from business investment, and also exports. This makes up aggregate demand, yeah? See, but what's been happening the world over is that the part for citizens can only buy what they earn, right? If you don't earn, you can't buy. And what has happened in the world all over is that the cost of the amount of wages people are getting has gone down. I'll give you a small quote here. See, this is from a book called The Cost of Inequality by Stuart Lansing. And it says the share of national output going to wages was 65% in advanced countries in mid-1970. But by 2008, wages only accounted for 53% of total national income. Think about it. 65% initially wages of the whole national income goes down to 53. Where does it go to then? Corporates. Because what's happening is all these fellas are outsourcing. They outsource to cheaper. So they close down the factory in US, close down, they outsource to China. They close down the services industry in England and outsource to India, right? Here we bring in migrant workers and cut down our wage rate, right? But efficiency goes up. We produce more goods. But you are killing the market. You're killing the market for your goods. You're cutting the capitalists are stupid, isn't it? They're digging a hole under their own feet. They need a market to sell things. But what they individually do to increase their own profit, done systemically, cuts the hole beneath their own feet, isn't it? That's exactly what's happening. Now, if you don't recognize that and see, okay, how are you going to handle that, then how are you going to plan for the economy? You know? Okay, so, and not only that, you see, talk of government consumption. Government gets the money from taxes. But the world over, all governments are cutting back on corporate taxes. Like Malaysia, we have 40% of profits were taxed in the 80s. Now we're only taxing 26%. And the people, my friends in the PR house were saying, bring it down to Singapore's rate of 19%. I just don't agree with that. The idea is, because if you don't bring down your taxes, the corporates will relocate to Singapore or relocate somewhere else or relocate to a tax haven. You completely lose your tax income. So the world over, taxes are coming down because the corporates are holding you at ransom, saying, if you don't cut down taxes, I'm going to go to Singapore, I'm going to go to Thailand, I'm going to go to tax haven. So the government doesn't have money. Where's all the money going? This middle pillar there, the business investment, the business group is getting a lot of money. But the problem now is, for the last 15 years, these guys don't have enough investment opportunities in the real economy. Because you've impoverished government, you've impoverished the working class, you've impoverished ordinary people. The 99% cannot buy your goods and services. So what do? You've got money, you've got to do something with money, right? Next one. You speculate. That's the only way to make money now. You go to the foreign exchange, forex market, you go to the futures commodities, you go to derivatives. It makes sense, it's all linked. The financial bubbles are linked to the maldistribution of the global economy's income. Okay? And this is something that Najib doesn't understand. Okay? I think you've got to take that into mind. So if you can't understand these things, don't expect a good budget from him. I will be very, very disappointed. Now what does this actually mean? Okay, let's take the next one. Okay, let's look at this, corn futures. What is, I think many people don't know what these futures are, Basically, one of the things you can do is you can make a contract to buy commodities in the future. You can buy corn, so many million tons of corn in the future. Say 4 months down the line, you make a contract to buy at a certain price. So right now, okay, let's say I'm one of the business guys, the 1% with a lot of money. I can't invest in making shoes because you guys don't want to buy my shoes. Right? I can't make too many cars, you guys don't buy my cars. So what I do is, I buy corn in the future because I know there is a drought in the US and the corn, there's going to be a shortage of corn in a few months' time. So I buy 3 months down the line, I buy tons and tons of corn. Okay? Then, as the day approaches, I also buy on the spot market. I mean, there's two things. One, you can buy contractually in the future, or you can buy on the open market. I also buy on the open market and push the prices higher. So I actually can make a killing out of corn in about 3 months' time by buying now, buying long, and after that, when the time comes, I buy some more, push it up nicely, make a big sum of money. Now that's exactly how it works. That's what speculation in the commodities actually is. You make a right call, you have enough money, you do it, and you can push the prices up. And next, it doesn't matter if people like these, in the poorer parts of the world, actually suffer, don't have enough food because the prices go up, or they starve. It doesn't matter. That is what's happening among the 1%. This is what's happening. It's an obscene system, but it is existing. All right. So next one. So I don't think he understands that the problem here now is the distribution of income in the world is gone away from the normal rakyat, from governments to the 1%. You've got to understand that is the underlying problem. If you don't understand that, next, you probably will understand this, that the maldistribution of income is causing poor aggregate demand, is causing the sovereign debt crisis, and the whole volatility of the financial sector. The whole problem happening in Europe and the rest of the world is this. So even now, Bernanke, buying that money, flushing money into the market by buying the bonds, is going to go not into production in the US, but it's going to go into bubbles in other parts of the world. Property markets are going to get pushed, Share markets in third world countries are going to get. That's why people like in Brazil, the Brazil economic minister came out criticizing what Bernanke is doing, saying what you guys are doing is going to affect us adversely. And even Zeti was talking about, our institutions are strong enough to withstand the pressure of America doing this, It has impact because the businessmen in America cannot produce more shoes. Those guys don't want to buy shoes, don't have money to buy shoes. So they're going to buy into the forex market, into the commodities market, it's going to cause more volatility. Okay? Next one. This is Greece. There's a huge devil going on in Greece today. That is the general strike. Because the whole of Europe is in crisis. There's a recession, number of countries already in recession. Okay? Now what is frightening about this recession is, it's not, we have recessions every 10 years, Dr. Zul was talking about. But what's coming up now is not an ordinary recession. This is actually an out of the norm recession. Because normally, next one please, normally in a recession, you do what this guy said. You know who this guy is? One of the brilliant economists of this century, of the last century, Keynes. Now see, Keynes basically said the government must step in and provide the aggregate demand at times of need. When the economy goes in downswing, you don't just sit back. You sit back, it's going to go further and further downstream, you're going to crash. Government comes in and spends. The concept of counter-cyclic spending. And that's Keynes' thing. And Dr. Zul talked about pump priming. Who primes the pump? Government, right? Can bankrupt governments do any pump priming or not? If you cannot borrow money to pay your staff, like in Greece, or like in Spain or in Italy, you can't borrow money for running the government. Can you borrow money to pump prime your economy? So I think we're in deep shit now, because these guys are going to crash. They're going to crash, and the only tool they have to solve the problem of crashing economically, recession, is by government spending. And government spending now in Europe is a huge problem. So now they've told the countries, don't Spain, look, you bring your budget down to below 5% or else we won't lend you money. Italy, same thing. The guys who are lending money to these guys are saying, control your spending. But if the guys control the spending, the recession is going to deepen. They haven't thought a way out of it because they don't want to talk about the 1%. The whole problem comes from the 1% grabbing too much of the wealth. And if you don't address that problem, you're going to have a recession and it's going to get deeper. Now, all this, Najib won't understand. Okay? So, not understanding all this, then you cannot do any of the things that's required to get out of it. Okay, next one. You see, this is what's going to happen. This is what's happening. Too much money in the 1%, going to have a severe recession, and it's prolonged. Rising prices of food, and also climatic change. Okay, next one. Okay. So these are the problems you're going to deal with, right? Now, bearing all those underlying problems in mind, okay, from the socialist perspective, a larger perspective, how do you handle this? Okay, next one. Next one, please. Okay, so let's say, you have this meltdown in Europe, you have rising price of food, and 50% of relations are already struggling. Obviously, what the budget should do is have a retrenchment fund. The MTC talking about it for the last 15 years, please have a retrenchment fund, so people who lose their jobs, at least get some kind of support. About 1/3 of the people lose their jobs in a recession, get nothing because the country just have a shutdown. They don't just have a lockout. They don't get their last month's pay. So we've been talking about this for the last 15 years, and then now it's still going on and on. They're talking now going to ILO to get ideas. Basically, it's one way in which they postpone it is to invite ILO to have a discussion. So it's still, but the government can start this off. A retirement fund is so useful for workers at a time they laid off. And not only for workers, it also helps small businessmen. Because if the workers lose income, all the pasar malam traders, all the small businessmen also going to lose income, isn't it? So by providing this thing, you're helping the economy stay afloat, It's a kind of counter-cyclic spending, which is also socially just. House loan repayment. During a recession, a lot of people, a lot of families may not lose jobs, but they lose overtime. And overtime contributes about 30 to 40% of their household income, When they lose overtime, then they can't maintain their household payments. And a lot of families run to areas of the banks. Can we have a support service, support fund, a kind of auxiliary fund by the government to sustain that? I'll bet you it won't be there in the budget. I'll bet you. None of this will be there in the budget. Job creation fund. At a time of a recession, you need to create jobs. There's so much of urban renewal you need. There's so many housing areas, there's so many squatters, who need amenities and all that. We can do that. We can use a certain fund, stop the MRT a bit like, There's huge, 40, 50 billion there. 10% of that can give you a nice, fund to have a lot of public works done with Malaysian labour. It won't be there. I think all these things will be there because they don't see the problem. They don't see the problem. How can they have solutions? Next one. Okay, TPP. See, the TPP is quite a terrible thing, Because the TPP basically increases the power of corporations in a number of ways. For example, it talks about, extending patents. Now patents for drugs for 20 years, don't make it longer. They brought in something called data exclusivity. That means even if you do a generic, you can't use their trials to argue for your generic. Because that is their property, the trials they did. They're making things more and more difficult, There's something they call expropriation clause. That means the government does something that affects your profits, you're expropriating them, you've got to pay them back. So the government, I think it was in Uruguay, wanted to bring in, for Philip Morris, asked them to put this terrible photographs of people with lung cancer on their cigarette box. And they took them to court. They said, you're going to affect my sales. There's expropriation of my profits. Okay. So this is the kind of thing we have with TPP. You know. So we have to, are we going to, and that is the underlying problem. There's too much power in the corporate sector, too much money going there. We've got to go against that. And to go against that is something that you can't go against it alone, you know. Because you need to do it as a group of countries going together to do it. If we just, let's say Malaysia itself, okay, we'll raise corporate tax by 10% or 15% next year. We may lose companies going overseas. But if a group of countries together agree to do that, you know, have a different kind of South-South cooperation, which is people-based. These are kind of things that Malaysia maybe should be thinking of doing, of how do you address the power of that 1%. And that is what the world's majority are asking for. The Occupy movement in the US, of the indignados in Spain, you know, the strikes you see in Europe, the Middle East. People are asking that the power of the 1% be curtailed, that wealth be used in a more responsible way. Why can't we go that way? But we're expecting this budget to do that. I think we're very disappointed. Okay, I'll talk a few more things. Tobin's tax, I think maybe I've already got that little notes to stop. You know, let's talk about tariffs, you know. These things, I think the whole issue of we shouldn't have tariffs, to be free trade, you know, we've got to question that. You see, in Malaysia, let's say we have a proper minimum wage, right? There is some of our exports, some of our factories which produce for the Europe market will then have goods which are a little bit more expensive and may be undercut by exports from Vietnam from China. So we lose those factory jobs. But at the same time, the increased wages that we are paying will create domestic demand. And we can have actually other factories producing for this. But with no tariffs, that means the low produced stuff from Vietnam and China will soak up this additional demand from our raised wages. And we end up with a net loss in factory jobs. You get my point? Okay, so now that's important. That means we are now being constrained to keep in a low wage regime because we're scared that we're going to lose manufacturing jobs. But you know, the last time I saw the 10 Commandments, it didn't say, thou shalt not have tariffs, you know. I mean, it's saying you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't kill, you shouldn't covet someone's wife and all that. They said all that, lah. It didn't say that, you know, thou shalt not have tariffs. You know, but the free trade people make it sound like the moment they talk about having tariffs, having, you know, some restriction to trade, they take it as an anti-human rights, as an anti-democracy, as it's against human beings, you know, the way that we talk about it. At once you're a communist, you know, at once you're, you know, atheist, at once you're atheist. I'm going to question it, you know. Maybe we shouldn't have tariffs if, let's say, a group of countries agree. We have a fair trade agreement. And we all increase corporate tax. We all increase minimum wages. And among us, we have no tariffs. But the guys who don't do that, don't increase corporate tax, and don't have proper minimum wages, we incur tariffs on them. Why not? It's not in the 10 Commandments. I don't think in any of the other religious texts either. Why not? Why can't we have a fair trade that is pro-people, and we sanction those who don't follow that? These are things that I think Malaysia can lead, that we should lead, and these are issues, are crying issues. But if you're looking for this in this current budget, I'm very sorry. You won't see it. Okay, next one is anything else? Okay. See, people like Chavez are trying things, you know, like the South-South cooperation happening in South America. We can learn from them. Maybe some of the things there may not be able to follow, but you know, I think these are issues that we have to look at. But if you're looking at this kind of thinking out of the box, thinking of an alternative for the future, thinking of how do you handle climatic change, thinking of peak oil, think of all these things, then don't expect anything in this stupid budget. Okay, thank you.
MalaysiaKini.com.
For the Malaysia Kini.
For the Malaysia Kini.